This week in a special edition of End Times Watch, and special edition because I'm not trying to start the habit of giving you 2 videos a day, every day on the weekend, we have a story that some of you might have heard about. An annual miracle that happens in the church that, when it fails to materialize, is often taken as a harbinger of bad things to come. And guess what? It didn't happen. That, plus a timely sign in the heavens is approaching, which, when coupled with the Christmas star I reported on last week and the failure of the miracle I'm referring here to materialize, should give all the faithful pause. So go to confession, which, frankly, is probably a good idea anyway. On to our story. First, the blood of St. Januarius failed to materialize this week. It's actually our main story. Now, some people will say, well, it has historically liquefied the fewest times in December out of all the months it tends to liquefy in. And that is technically true. However, let's look at some historic context. At times in history when it didn't liquefy, since 2020 is a different year unlike any other in living memory. The miracle did not occur in 1980, shortly before an earthquake south of Naples that resulted in a high human cost. The blood also remained in solid state in 1939, which later in that year, cholera arrived in Naples. Also, in the same year, 1939, it was just prior to the start of that, big war. And in 1943, when the Germans took over that country, it also did not materialize. In the most distant past, the absence of the regular miracle was associated with military defeat. Volcanoes and things like our current affliction, only much more severe. Since 2016, when things in the church started getting really, really weird, with worrying church news happening almost daily, including, but not limited to, the Vatican's preferential focus on commemorating the Protestants' 500th anniversary in 2017, instead of them shedding much lesser light on the centennial year of Our Lady of Fatima. Yes, that happened. They put greater focus on Luther in a positive light than the miracle of the sun for its 100th anniversary. Just let that one marinate for a while. Yes, in 2018, the Vatican has put more focus on Luther than they did in Our Lady of Fatima, 2017 at any rate. The miracle has been faithfully recorded since the late 14th century, and honestly, not that many times in the 630 years has it gone unliquefied at Christmas. It has happened with increasingly regularity in the last few years, and since people only see things in the material sense, consider the state of the Church in recent years, with Amoris Laetitia, the Amazon Synod, the rise of men like James Martin and Cardinal Coco Palmero, Ted McCarrick, and others who represent a massive shift in the Church having their errors made public for all to see, and the sense of spiritual desolation in the Church since that time picking up at a faster and faster pace. And then the Church's response to all things 2020. As far as I can tell, it's supposed to liquefy 3 times in a year, and it did so twice already in 2020. A failure to liquefy has historically meant an affliction, or war was on its way, or some other overtly natural and material chastisement was coming. We're already hearing whispers of a new version of the cause of the present situation manifesting itself in the United Kingdom. Plus, there are signs that there is conflict for those who have eyes to see to report on. See the recent news out of Canada, for example. Catholic World Report has more on the track record of the blood of St. Januarius. Quote, the abbot, who is in charge of making public the state of the blood, his name is De Gregorio, said that the miracle sometimes occurred later in the day. In a video he could be seen saying, a few years ago at 5 in the afternoon, the home stretch it liquefied, so we don't know what's going to happen. The actual state, as you can see well, is absolutely solid. It does not give any sign, not even a little drop, as sometimes falls, he added. It's all right, we will await the sign with faith. By the end of the day's evening mass, however, the blood was still solid. End quote. Sometimes it doesn't liquefy when it's expected to, but still does so later in the day. Just not this time. Sure, I know some will say again it doesn't mean much since it did liquefy twice in the past year. Maybe that's true. Let's hope it is. Especially since one Italian journalist points out in the last 34 years it has hardly happened in December. Again, interesting, but we're talking about a miracle that occurs multiple times a year over the last 630 years. Since 1986, it hasn't happened in December all that much. Does that mean much in the grand scheme of things? Maybe. Maybe it means nothing. We can hope and pray that it doesn't, but again, does anyone really think 2021 is going to be any better than 2020? I don't, and I know that most of you hearing this don't think that 2021 is going to be a better year. You yourself have the power in your hands, however, to make 2020 year a better year in the most important way possible. And that way is to grow closer to Jesus Christ by growing in sanctity, by increasing your prayer life, by resisting all evil, by standing up against these wicked movements in the world, and especially those that have crept up into the church, to stop sinning, to go to confession with greater regularity, and to address the root of those sins that keep driving you to go to confession. If you haven't thought about the secular practice of picking up a New Year's resolution, pick one up. One that makes your prayer life grow and will help you grow in holiness. There's nothing really wrong with New Year's resolutions, just people usually choose silly, purely material things. Make this year different. If you pray the rosary already daily, get enrolled in and wear the brown scapular. Start a devotion to the holy face of our Lord, or to his shoulder wound, or to St. Joseph, or something. By itself, in light of the recent 34-year track record with the blood of St. Januarius, some will say, meh, it's not a big deal. But let's take a different view for a moment. Let's look at the bigger picture of just this month. Weird events happening in December. There have been reports of fireballs over the skies of Rome, and Europe in general. The failure of the blood of St. Januarius to liquefy at this time isn't an isolated event, really. Go back to the Christmas star, which I covered recently. Well, it was getting hidden by our host, so you might not have seen it, so check out the recommended video at the end of this one for that story. It'll be the recommended video at the end. Plus the story, which is odd. From NASA, we learned that a cathedral-sized asteroid is set to make a close flyby of the Earth on Christmas Day. A very, very close flyby. Now, given that it is just the size of a relatively small building, it's probably nothing to worry about. Objects of that size are not planet smashers by any stretch, but still worth keeping an eye on. You wouldn't want the thing to land in your country, probably, or off your coastline. If you're not sure what I mean by the asteroid, well, here we go, from the Express. Headline: Asteroid as big as Salisbury Cathedral set to pass Earth on Christmas Day. An asteroid as big as Salisbury Cathedral is due to have a close encounter with Earth on Christmas Day, according to NASA. A medieval cathedral is nothing to scoff at. They are quite large. Again, it's not a planet smasher by any stretch, but you wouldn't want this thing touching down in your country, that is for sure. Quote, the peak of the festive season will see a visitor from space pass by the Earth. The asteroid in question is known as 501647, or 2014 SD224. It is a huge space rock measuring roughly 123 meters in size. At that length, it is almost perfectly matches the height of the Salisbury Cathedral. The asteroid will swing by Earth on December 25th at the astronomical speed of 10 kilometers per second, or 36,000 kilometers per hour. Asteroid 501647 will swing by at a very safe distance, however. End quote. Their very safe distance is a distance of 8 times of that of the Earth to the Moon, which they make sound far, but it isn't actually, not in space terms. If you're in the right place at the right time, you might be able to see it with the naked eye. Thus, we get back to signs in the heavens. That Christmas star, which will be the alignment of 2 planets in the night sky that will create what looks like a cross in the sky just a few days before Christmas. Things are getting weird, folks, and it almost makes me think that God is nudging us, trying to get us out of our complacency. If any year should have awoken us all up, it's 2020. But it hasn't, and I'm as guilty of this as anyone else, if not more so. But you and I can start now, because most of us can kind of tell something is coming down the metaphoric road, that we're unlikely to have things get to a better place anytime soon. Just look at all the things Caesar is demanding and how the bishops are going along with it. So buckle up, folks, because this is going to be an interesting year. I wanted to give you this video now as opposed to during Christmas week, because while I'm still going to cover the news this week, I do want to avoid the apocalyptic in the days just before Christmas Day if I can. The news will probably be bad enough as it is leading up to Christmas, and some prudence is obviously needed. But what do you think? Is this all just nothing? Is it just hooey? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, please, and as always, pray for the Church. Thanks for listening. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.